Hello ladies and gentlemen, Roel's Gussie here again, back with another video for you guys today. Real quick, I want to apologize about the surface right here. I hope it's not bothersome. I know it's a little dirty, but eventually I'm going to get the right equipment for YouTube, especially when I make it big, right? Because you want the best quality as possible for you guys, of course. But to cut straight to the point, today's video is going to be about Batman. I hope I'm saying that right, because I always say my T's wrong, like I pronounce them as D's. But specifically, we're going to be discussing what Batman villains I would like to see in film, whether it's Matt Reeves' The Batman universe, which I was about to cuss, which I really love, by the way, or James Gunn's Batman adaptation, which is going to be revolving around the Bat family, which is pretty exciting news. But before we get into that conversation, I just want to talk about Batman for a little bit, like just anything that pops up into mind with Batman. When it comes to DC, it's really interesting because a lot of people that I have spoken to are always back and forth in regards as to who's the face of DC. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, Superman, right? And I can kind of agree with them, especially since I think Superman is just the face of superheroes altogether, especially when he was the first superhero to ever be created. But you also, Batman is pretty up there, honestly. Because when you look at Marvel, it's automatically Spider-Man. Like, there's just no hesitation. It's Spider-Man, right? Because out of all the Marvel characters, Spider-Man has the most video games, the most toys, the most films, or maybe X-Men has the most films, the most cartoons, the most appearances, etc. And it's like, yeah, Wolverine and Hulk and Iron Man, Black Widow, like they're all popular, but compared to Spider-Man is just practically the face of Marvel, right? Like, there's no one on Spider-Man's level in Marvel in terms of popularity. But when you look at DC, it's like, oh shit, you have Batman and then you have Superman, and they're pretty close in range. I would even say Wonder Woman's pretty up there too, because out of all the woman superheroes, Wonder Woman is definitely the most well known, and she's a badass. But if I had to say who the face of DC would be, I would personally say Superman, just because he was the first superhero created. I feel like when people think of DC, they think of Superman before Batman. However, I would not be upset if someone were to say, oh, Batman is the mascot of DC. Especially in this millennium, yeah. Because in the past 10 years, tell me who has had more media, Batman or Superman, right? Really think about it. Like, we're talking about movies, cartoons, video games, toys, etc. You tell me who you think, who you saw more throughout the years. if you guessed Batman, then you're right, because it's true. Batman has had 5 video games in the past 10 years with the Arkham series and then Gotham Knights. Oh, and then I guess you can count Injustice, but Superman is a big part of Injustice, of course. Then you also have the Dark Knight films, and then you have Batman vs. Superman, which Superman's in it again, and Superman had Man of Steel. But Batman also had Joker, and with Joaquin Phoenix, and I believe Todd Phillips directed the film. And of course, that film doesn't feature Batman per se, but it features Bruce Wayne, and Joker is a Batman character, so yeah, that counts as a Batman project. When it comes to animation, I can't really think of anything, I don't think. I don't know. But overall, Batman wins when it comes to media consumption. Like, Batman ultimately had more of a media presence than Superman did. So whenever people say, like, oh, I think Batman is the face of DC, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I can agree with you on that matter, just because of how big of a presence Batman has had. I mean, Batman just had a film last year with Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson. Superman has yet to have a film, even though James Gunn is making a new Superman film, which I'm looking forward to. But you also, Superman just hasn't really been around. I mean, he was in the Snyder Cut, but that was kind of a weird situation, just because, oh my god, the toxicity of the Snyder Cut is insane to me, by the way. That in itself is a whole different video. But the fact that I don't like the message behind the Snyder Cut, because basically I think fans took that as the wrong way, and they basically have this ideology of, oh, if we bully a company, we'll get what we want. Because that's exactly what they did to Warner Brothers. Snyder fans are something else. But they basically bullied Warner Brothers until Warner Brothers was like, okay, you know what, we're so tired of y'all. Like, we're gonna release it. But they only released it because of the toxicity of the fans, which is kind of bullshit, low-key. I don't think that was a good way of, releasing the Snyder Cut. But regardless, I'm glad we got it. And it was really badass. It really was. And then Superman was in Black Adam, of course. But then all of that went down the drain just because, James Gunn is now running the DC universe. So basically DC is getting a reboot. So it's kind of like, I thought I noticed something. But it's kind of like, oh, well, no more Henry Cavill, which is a damn shame. He's a really, really good actor. And he really is passionate about Superman. So it really sucks how DC treated him. It's just a shame, but the thing about Batman is I just really, really love Bruce Wayne and Batman. I really love how dark and gritty the character is. And I think his no killing rule just makes him even more interesting, because, it's like he doesn't kill, but he's gonna leave you in a wheelchair. He's gonna break your bones. He's gonna beat the fuck out of you. I mean, it's so funny because in the DC universe, criminals always say oh, I would rather deal with Superman than Batman, because and it's funny because Superman is a literal god. No ordinary criminal can beat him, and Superman can kill them if he wanted to. But Superman is a Boy Scout. He's a goody good boy. So he goes really easy on the criminals, especially because he's essentially a guide. But Batman is a human being with no superpowers, unless you count being rich as a superpower. But he's just so brutal. Like, he has no remorse for criminals because he's not gonna let a criminal die, and he'll even save a criminal if that criminal's going to like jump off a building or something. But he's not gonna hold back with you at all. Like, he really isn't. Like, he's gonna give it his all to you, and I think that's just so interesting about Batman and the Dark Knight. And when it comes to Batman's villains, I love the fucking villains so much in the Batman universe because it's so extremely diverse. I don't know how to explain it. Sorry, I thought I noticed something. But, like, okay, so Spider-Man has a peripheral of iconic villains, but I personally think Batman's cast of villains is more diverse than Spider-Man's, because when it comes to Batman, you have monster. Okay, maybe it is like Spider-Man, but I guess it's just more of a personal preference. Like, I prefer the Batman villains more so than Spider-Man, because you have your fair share of crime bosses, but each crime boss is different, right? Like, you have Falcone and the Penguin, who are more in like the mafia style, and Penguin's really, really old school. But then you have people like Two-Face and what was the other one? Two-Face and Black Mask, who are more like in the new like generation, like they're more modern, right? Like, they're more of a like there's something you see like in today's world, if that makes sense. And then you also have psychopaths, right? You have Joker, obviously, but you also have people like Riddler and Professor Pig, right? Like, those type of villains, because and they're all interesting too. Like, Joker, what's so scary about Joker is he has no goal, and he also has nothing to lose, because Batman is basically a toy to Joker. He just loves playing with Batman. So he's never like has a goal, right? Like, he never like, he it's not like he wants to be the most powerful being in the universe. Like, no. He literally just wants to play with Batman. And that makes him extremely dangerous, because he'll do anything just to get Batman's attention, or he'll go above and beyond to like impress Batman, right? Because in his eyes, he wants to be Batman's number one foe, which he is. But like it would hurt his feelings if like someone like Clayface was Batman's number one villain. He'll be like, what? I thought I was your number one villain, which is kind of funny to think about. But you also, you have people like Riddler too, who I think Riddler is very, very interesting. And there's a good example of how Riddler is in the game Arkham Knight, because in the film, in Matt Reeves' film, the Riddler is a very, very different character. But most of the time, the Riddler is a very, very narcissistic character, and he's pretty smart, but Batman is always one step ahead of the Riddler, right? So, spoiler alert for the video games, or just in general about the movies and everything. But I felt like you knew that before clicking into this video. But anyways, at the end of Arkham Knight, Batman reveals his identity, and everyone finds out he's Bruce Wayne. But the Riddler is so deranged, and he's so egomaniac that he loses his sense of conscious, because he talks to Batman and he's like, oh, like, you can't fool me, Batman. Like, I know you're not Bruce Wayne. Like, you just want people to think you're Bruce Wayne, but I know who you really are. Like, I know it's just fake. And it's so interesting because it's like, wow, this guy is so fucking lost. Holy shit. Like, he is so deranged. Like, and that's what makes the Riddler so intriguing. And I really like that Rocksteady added that with Riddler, because it just makes his character like so much more compelling, you know? And then you have Professor Pig, who is just straight up loony. He is just like pure psychopath. Like he's really like fucked up in the head. Like, I mean, he kills people, but like he's just so mentally insane. Like, even people like Riddler and Joker question Professor Pig. They're like, damn, like, what the hell is wrong with this guy, you know? Like, that's how loony he is, you know? But you know, you have your crime bosses, you have your psychopaths, and then you also have your superpowered individuals or supernatural individuals. You know, Scarecrow isn't necessarily supernatural, but he kind of is due to his fear toxin, and it makes him a really interesting character because of that. But then you also have villains like Killer Croc, who's straight up a monster. You have Clayface, who can basically shift into anybody. You have Ra's al Ghul, who's a ninja, and he has this whole like guild basically, and he's always constantly being resurrected because of the Lazarus Pit. You have Mr. Freeze, who out of all the Batman villains is probably not like the most villainy per se, just because he wants to save Nora, his wife. Who else, man? You have Firefly, who literally is just a guy in a jetpack and like is obsessed with fire. You have Deathstroke, and I'm pretty sure Deathstroke is a Batman villain, if I'm not mistaken. Because there's always this like interesting concept in comics where certain characters like share a villain together. For instance, in Spider-Man or in Marvel, the Kingpin, he's really more of a Daredevil villain, but a lot of people refer to him as a Spider-Man villain, which is totally like it's correct, because the Kingpin is like really associated with Spider-Man as much as he is with Daredevil. But in a sense, he started with Daredevil, so you know, in a sense he's a Daredevil villain, but I wouldn't really, you know, like, it doesn't like catch me off guard when people call Kingpin a Spider-Man villain, especially in the Spider-Man cartoon, because Kingpin was like the Thanos in that cartoon, and I'm talking about the 90s and 80s cartoon. Like, he was the man behind the chair, and he basically sent all the villains to go kill Spider-Man. Like, I thought it was pretty cool, honestly. But why was I talking about that? It was about a certain villain in Batman. Who was I talking about? Oh, Deathstroke. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Deathstroke is a Batman villain. Yeah, he's a Batman villain. You know, you have Deathstroke, who's a literal trained assassin. You have Deadshot, who has like perfect aim with guns. He never misses. You have Hush, and I guess Hush is like more on the psycho side. But Hush is interesting because he's actually Bruce's friend, and he looks like Bruce, so that makes Hush more interesting. But Batman just has this insane cast of villains. And one of the best things I love about Batman's villains is seeing them interact together. Because it's so awesome. I also forgot to mention Mad Hatter. I just wanted to mention him because he's such a great villain. Um, Basically, it's this guy who truly believes he's the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. And it's so interesting because out of all the villains, you can tell Batman is like really, really, he's really harmful with Mad Hatter. It's almost like he really despises Mad Hatter more than anyone else, which is interesting to think about. But what's crazy about the Mad Hatter is like he uses psychotics to always brainwash Batman, and Batman always like ends up in like an Alice in Wonderland state where like gigantism and stuff like that, and he has to like fight through the illusions and then eventually reach Mad Hatter, which I think is really, really cool. And I'm just talking about the video games. I don't really know how he works in the shows or like the comics, but you know. And then Batmite too. I don't know if he's a villain per se, but he's definitely a Batman associated character. I really hope I didn't forget any villains because that would be awkward. I mean, Killer Moth, Polka Dot Man, I think he's a Batman villain. Ratcatcher, White Shark, Prometheus, Deacon. I can't. I mean, I guess elocutioner. I mean, who even knows who that guy is? I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's. I mean, that's all I could think of at least. I'm pretty sure I am missing. Oh, Zsasz. Zsasz is also a really cool villain, because the thing about Zsasz is Zsasz could easily exist in real life. And I think that's why Zsasz is so scary, because Zsasz is also like Professor Pig, who's very, very deranged. But the thing about Zsasz is Zsasz has zero remorse. Like, you can never change Zsasz. Like, he is just straight up sick in the head. Like, he literally has scars all over his body, because each mark represents a kill, and his entire body is covered in scars. So it's like, holy shit, this guy is like literally, you know, he's an evil person, you know. But yeah, with that all out of the way, now I'm going to be discussing which villains I would love to see in a Batman film. And I think I'll be focusing on the Reeves universe specifically. But I think I'll just talk about Batman as a whole, because Batman Brave New World, or Brave World, I don't remember what it's called, but James Gunn's Batman project, I definitely think it's going to be more lighthearted, because the Bat family is going to be involved, which I think is really awesome, by the way. That's really, really cool. Finally, we get to see the Bat family in live action, because we never got to. I mean, I think we've only had one Robin in the entirety of live action, which is crazy to me, being Batman and Robin, the film. But I do think that film's gonna be more lighthearted. Um, so like with the tone I'm going with, I don't think it would work in that film. Though I am curious who the villain would be. I mean, I think Joker makes sense, but I mean, we've seen so much Joker already that I would kind of want a new mantle for a character. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Um, but to start off, right off the bat, okay, Scarecrow. Tell me, tell me why Scarecrow has never been a main villain in a Batman movie. Why? Why? That is so crazy to me. That is just insane. Now, yes, Scarecrow is in Batman. He's in the Dark Knight trilogy, and he is like a somewhat big part in the first film. But then after that, he's kind of just a background character, which I don't know why Christopher Nolan did that to Scarecrow. I thought it was kind of lame. Even worse is he's played by Cillian Murphy, and I'm not saying Cillian Murphy did a terrible job. I'm just saying you had such a talented actor to play Scarecrow, and yet you barely did anything with him. You know what I mean? But fortunately, you know, Christopher Nolan would give Cillian Murphy a main role being Oppenheimer, so I guess it worked out for him, honestly. But when it comes to Scarecrow, just imagine the Batman Reeves universe with Robert Pattinson, alright? Imagine if Scarecrow is the main villain. Oh my god, that literally fits perfectly with that universe. And what's so cool about that concept is a Batman film with Scarecrow as the main villain could easily be a horror movie. It could easily be a scary movie. Like wouldn't that be awesome? That would be so cool. Like it really would be. I mean, it could even be rated R too, because then they can really go above and beyond with the horror elements with Scarecrow and Batman. I mean, that's just really, really cool. And it's not even just the horror aspect, it's also just the psychological aspect, because we can see the fear toxic grow Batman as a character, right? Like maybe the fear toxin helps him get over his parents' death or something along those lines. Like it could be a really good psychological horror film, and it's just crazy to me that Scarecrow just hasn't been the villain yet. Like I just don't understand why they're holding back from Scarecrow, because it just sounds like a no-brainer. Like it really does. It's like how have you not made a film with Scarecrow as the main villain? I just don't understand. Um, and before I continue, I would just like to say that the rumors going around as of recent are suggesting that Clayface is actually the villain for Batman 2. And I don't really know how to feel about that, honestly. I don't know. Because the thing about the Reeves universe is I feel like it's kind of in keen with Nolan's trilogy, because in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, it was so grounded that it just wouldn't make sense for characters like Killer Croc or Clayface to be in that universe, right? And I feel like that's kind of the same case with the Reeves universe, but I suppose they could make supernatural elements work into this universe. I wouldn't mind it, honestly. But I remember someone telling me that they were gonna go with the serial killer persona of Clayface, because I think at one point in the comics, Clayface was just a serial killer, and it wasn't until they made him into the monster and like shapeshifter he is today. But if he is the monster and shapeshifter, I think it could work, honestly. Like, I think it would be pretty cool, especially since Clayface has never had a live action appearance before. So I think it could kind of be scary too. Like, they could make it work, and Clayface would feel like a threat because, you know, Batman, Robert Pattinson's Batman has never faced a threat like that. So we as an audience would be like, oh shit, you know, this is the real deal, you know? So I'm honestly, I think Clayface as a villain could work too. I think that would be pretty exciting. It's just not, it's not like something that I would choose as one of my top picks, right? Because I guess there's just more intriguing villains than Clayface. But moving on, the next villain would be Mr. Freeze in the Matt Reeves universe. Now, Mr. Freeze is also a little supernatural, but not necessarily, because everything revolving Mr. Freeze is science. So it's not like Clayface where it's like completely supernatural. Like, no, like Mr. Freeze, you know, he created his weapons and such. But the reason why I want Mr. Freeze as a villain so incredibly bad is because I think the aesthetic of a Batman film with the Reeves universe and having Mr. Freeze as a villain is literally like, it's a perfect match, right? Literally a perfect match, okay? Because imagine Batman 2, the sequel. Imagine it takes place around Christmas and all of Gotham is full of Christmas decorations, and it's snowing in Gotham. So we get these beautiful shots of Gotham City and like the Christmas vibes and the snow and like the starry night. Like, that would just be so awesome. Like, that would be really, really awesome. And that would just be such an awesome aesthetic, honestly. And then you have Mr. Freeze as the villain. And you know, he could have a nice aesthetic to him too. Like, he could be more like how do I put it? Like, he can kind of look aesthetic, I guess, and he can kind of be scary too, because like he has like such like an evil robot voice, I guess. But the most interesting thing about Mr. Freeze is Mr. Freeze is obviously not really a villain. And I feel like Matt Reeves can make Mr. Freeze work to where we as an audience are kind of rooting for Mr. Freeze, because Mr. Freeze is trying to save his wife, and you know, Batman gets in his way, or like, you know, like a compelling villain essentially. And you know, it can make for like a touching story. Like, we can be like, damn, you know, Mr. Freeze, bro, like, you can't help but feel bad for him, you know? Like, you want to root for him low-key. Like, it's honestly just a perfect solution. Like, it's like Scarecrow, where it's like, especially in the Reeves universe, I truly, truly feel like Mr. Freeze can work. And it would just be super awesome to see that Christmas aesthetic in Gotham alongside just the winter aspect in general, and Mr. Freeze's theme being cold and you know, ice, which I think could be really, really awesome for like an aesthetic film. But aesthetics aside, like story wise, it would also be really brilliant, I would imagine. What time is it? 11. Okay. Alright. So far I've mentioned villains that have already appeared in films. What about villains that haven't appeared in films? Also, I forgot to mention Poison Ivy as one of the villains. She's also really badass. And Harley Quinn, of course. But I guess whenever I say Joker, I kind of just like associate Harley Quinn with Joker anyways. And then Copperhead, right? But anywho, I think Zsasz or Professor Pig can work perfectly in the Reeves universe. Now, if I had to go with one of them, I'd go with Professor Pig, because Zsasz would be kind of similar to the Riddler in a sense, at least in the Reeves universe, but I do think they could make Zsasz work to where it doesn't feel repetitive, because Zsasz is obviously more deranged than Riddler, because in the Reeves universe, Riddler is just kind of obsessed with Batman. But I feel like they would make Zsasz into like a genuine serial killer who would actually kill just for the fun of it, not because he's trying to please Batman or whatever, right? But I would have to choose Professor Pig, because Professor Pig is unique, right? Because out of all the Batman villains, I think Professor Pig is truly like the most deranged villain, because he's literally loony, right? He's always singing, he performs surgeries, he tries to fix people. Like that guy is just straight up nuts. Like he has no sense of clarity, right? Does that make sense? Because it's like Joker and Zsasz, they're insane, but they're not stupid. Like they're pretty competent. And Professor Pig isn't necessarily stupid, but it's like he has that like loony persona where he just feels so disconnected from reality that's what makes him so scary, because it's like, holy shit, this guy has nothing to lose for. You literally can't talk to him, you can't convince him, you can't have a conversation with him. Like that guy's just straight up loony, you know? He's just straight up out of this planet. He really is. So I think Professor Pig would be super, super awesome in the Batman universe, and it would definitely be an upgrade from Riddler, because it's like I was saying about the competence thing. You know, Riddler's smart. Riddler can have a conversation with Batman. But Professor Pig, good luck trying. I mean, what, that guy's just deranged. He's not on planet Earth. He's really not. And I feel like that would be such a perfect threat for Robert Pattinson's Batman, because it would be like, damn, this guy's just straight up sick. You know, he's straight up a sicko. Like there's no redemption for him. You know? So I think Professor Pig would be great, and it can also work as a horror film in a sense. But I do have to wonder who would play Professor Pig. Like who who's talented enough to take on that role, because I feel like Professor Pig is a very, very challenging role. Like, it's super, super challenging. Like, and I'm going based off Arkham Knight's performance of Professor Pig. Like if we're basing it off that performance, I wonder who could replicate that performance. I'm sure someone out there can, but Professor Pig, that would be really awesome to see in the Reeves universe. And it would also give Professor Pig more of a mainstream appearance, because people know him from the video games, but like people who watch the Batman movies, like they're not gonna know who Professor Pig is. But moving on, let's see. Who else? I mean, I guess Hush could be interesting. And it would kind of be cool to see like Robert Pattinson's face like all like stitched up on like the actor playing Hush. And it could create like kind of a cool story in the sense of like maybe he takes over Bruce Wayne's persona, and Batman has to stop, you know, the Bruce Wayne duplicate from, you know, taking over Bruce Wayne. And it's kind of interesting because Hush, like, he, you know, Batman is always a problem for Hush, but Hush doesn't know he's dealing with Bruce Wayne, so it kind of creates this like really interesting dilemma where it's like, damn, you know, kind of weird. Why do I feel like someone's like listening to me? I don't know. Also, kind of random, but I feel like there's a plot hole with Hush, because Hush is a surgeon, so he literally perfectly replicates Batman's face. And considering Batman has his mouth and jaw exposed, wouldn't you think after like studying Bruce's face like so much, wouldn't you think he would like take one good look at Batman and just immediately know that's Bruce based on that alone? I mean, it's a plot hole, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but I feel like it would make sense for Hush to just like immediately recognize Batman from that alone. I mean, right? It makes sense, but that's just a little nitpick of mine. I mean, I guess Prometheus and Ratcatcher would be pretty cool. Especially Ratcatcher, but like I don't really know too much about their characters, as in like their psychologies. So I don't really have a lot to say about those characters. I do think Killer Croc could make a good villain, but Killer Croc, I don't know. Like, I don't really. I think he's better off as like a side villain and like not as like a main threats. Because the only thing about Killer Croc is that he's just a powerhouse. Like, that's literally it. Like, Killer Croc really, he doesn't really have any character, but I guess they could make character out of him. I don't know. Deathstroke. Now that is interesting, because whenever Ben Affleck was directing his Batman film, I don't know if it was confirmed or not, but there was a lot of leaks and rumors suggesting that Deathstroke was going to be the villain for Batfleck's film, the Batfleck film, you know, Ben Affleck. And I remember being so excited about that, because I was like, damn, like this is going to be badass, because Batman and Slade are incredibly they're really really excellent in combat, right? So it would have been badass seeing them fight and like using all their gadgets. Like that could have been a really really awesome action scene. And I feel like that's the only reason why I would want Deathstroke as a main villain, just because I would just want to see the fight in live action, just because it's never been done before in live action. But I mean, Deathstroke as a character is pretty interesting, and I think one of his like redeeming qualities is the fact that he's actually challenging the Batman. Because yeah, Batman can beat him, but like Batman has to put a lot more effort with Deathstroke than say someone like Riddler, right? Like he would have to put more effort with Deathstroke, because Deathstroke actually fights back, and he's good at hand-to-hand combat, which is Batman's strength, hand-to-hand combat and gadgets. So I do hope at one point down the line we do see Deathstroke as a main villain, which would be really, really awesome. That would just be really, really, really cool. That would be really cool, like to see that in live action. Deathstroke versus Batman, man. That would be a badass action sequence. Bane. I mean, I think Tom Hardy did a good job of Bane, and I mean, I don't know. I'm not like super. I mean, Bane can be interesting, but it's like I said, like I think it's kind of like with Joker, where like I'm just kind of tired of Joker, and I'm kind of tired of Bane. I kind of want to give room, like more room for like newer villains. Because Matt Reeves, he decided to make Riddler the villain, and I think that was a really good choice, because the Riddler is a pretty mainstream Batman villain, but he's only had 2 appearances in film, being Jim Carrey's Riddler, which I think Jim Carrey's Riddler is a good interpretation of a comic book Riddler. And then I think Riddler is in The Dark Knight, but it's kind of like a cameo. Because I think it's a character named Edward Enigma, and it's before he becomes Riddler. But it was just kind of like a fun Easter egg, like, oh, like it's Riddler, like maybe he'll show up at some point, But I really like what Matt Reeves did with Riddler, because he basically made him into the Zodiac Killer, which unfortunately the Zodiac Killer is a real thing. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, yes, the Zodiac Killer is interesting, but it still makes me sad that it happened in real life, because I wish it was fiction, because the fact that actual people died who were innocent, and the fact that he was never caught, that just pisses me off, honestly. It really does. It really does. I mean, I really wish that whole case was in real life. But, the Riddler in the Batman, very, very much inspired by the Zodiac Killer. I even think his costume alone is pretty, based on like what one victim saw of the Zodiac Killer. The Riddler costume is kind of based on that. So you could tell Matt Reeves like really liked the case, or he just simply like was influenced by that, and that was his vision for Riddler, which I think works great for the Batman universe. But Matt Reeves had made Riddler a main villain, because I think before the Batman, people were kind of like how do you say it? Skeptical about the Riddler, because they were like, what Riddler? Like, why would he be the villain? Right? Like, he's kind of like, it's not like the Riddler sucks, but I guess it's like people were thinking like, oh, like what about like Deathstroke, or what about why am I having so hard time? Like, why am I having a hard time coming up with Batman villains? Like, oh, like why not Mr. Freeze, or why not Ra's al Ghul? Like why Riddler out of all people? But then everyone was like, damn, Riddler was badass, and Paul Dano fucking killed it as Riddler. By the way, everyone in that film killed it, but I think Paul Dano, he really made like Riddler work, like for the vision that Matt Reeves was going for. Paul Dano like really executed it well, and I really love that whole like interrogation scene with Riddler and Batman. I thought that was really cool. Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter would be really cool in the live action because of his psychotics. It's kind of like a Scarecrow, but also just because the Mad Hatter is also a deranged character, because he truly believes he's like actually Mad Hatter, and he always takes his victims and he's like, oh, you're my Alice. And it's really disturbing actually, because it's really heavily implied that he, you know, blanks them and all that disgusting stuff. So it's kind of like, Jesus, like, no wonder why Batman hates that guy so much, you know? Like, that's just insane. You know, so I think Mad Hatter would be interesting just because it would be like, it would be interesting, and it would just be a new take on Batman, like something we've never seen before, you know? Firefly, we were actually gonna see Firefly in live action with Batgirl, and Brendan Fraser was gonna play Firefly, but then that film ultimately got canceled, which is weird. And I really wish it didn't get canceled, because it would have been awesome to see a Firefly actually be in live action, and we may never see that, which really, really sucks. But I mean, never say never. I mean, maybe Batgirl might release one day. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this video. As you guys can tell, I really, really love Batman. I love Batman so much. I mean, there's this comic, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like something about, the title is like On the Dark Knight, or like On the Dark, like a very something house, I don't remember. But it's basically the comic book that inspired the game Arkham Asylum. And it's such a good comic book because it's just so trippy with the art style and the story. Like, it's just such a unique Batman story, and I really, really love it. It is disturbing, like, fair warning. Like, it's really disturbing, actually. Like, it's really, really messed up. But it, because of that like aspect, like that's what makes the story like so intriguing, because like you really, you know, Batman's like, the interpretation of Batman and Joker in that comic is just so interesting to me, and it's, I wish they dived more into that, because they haven't really, you know, done anything like that again. But apparently they are making a sequel to the comics, so that's pretty interesting. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Please, please, please leave down in the comments below who you want to see in live action as a Batman villain, whether it's in the Batman universe with Matt Reeves, or whether it's in James Gunn's new interpretation of Batman, or just maybe just leave a comment about anything Batman related. You know, what's your favorite Arkham game and why? Who's your favorite villain? What's your favorite film? Or even just superheroes in general. Because I was kind of talking about DC, but my whole main point was Batman. So, you know, I would have to make another video, I guess, regarding Superman and, you know, Spider-Man. Because I really love superheroes in general. But yeah, thank y'all for watching. Much, much love. Y'all have a beautiful day. And as always, take care.